Hi folks, I'm back and following yesterday's online chat, which of course the internet finally gave up on me and we had to stop. I thought I'd go back and pick up some of the questions that were asked. I couldn't actually read them, they were going so fast on the live chat. So Nix111 asks, how often do you tune your drums and change your skins? Well, it depends. If I'm on tour and I'm hitting the drums really hard, then I think I can tell when they're starting to go. It's pretty obvious actually. When you change a head, you can see and even hear that there's a big dent. Can you see that? There's a kind of crater in the middle that I can actually push up, this little crater in the middle. That head has been stretched too far, so that obviously needs changing, and the same things happen on the toms. Arpit Manaktala, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing anyone's name correctly. I've always seen your videos talking about drum tuning, but never seen any video telling about the tuning of your reso heads. Kindly share the relative tuning between the reso and batter heads, the resonant heads. So I got asked this question quite recently on Drummer World, so I did actually do all the research. Now, trying to get a clear pitch out of the drums is not as easy. So what I figured was, I always use 8, 10, 12, and then 15, 18. So for the 8-inch tom, the top head is about an E, and the bottom head is a bit tighter, and it's a G. So let me try and explain that on the piano. So if the bottom head, the top head is an E, the bottom head is a G, that is a minor third. On the 10-inch tom, the top head is a B, and the bottom heads are always higher. The bottom head is a C sharp, which is a major second interval. These pitches are a little bit sharp or flat of perfect tuning. The 12-inch tom, the bottom head is F sharp, and the top head is F sharp and the bottom head is A minor. It's A minor. It's A, which again is a minor third, a bit like the 8-inch was. The 15-inch tom, the top head is a B and the bottom head is a C sharp, which is a major second, and the 18-inch tom is a G, and the bottom head is an A, which again is a major second. That tends to be the kind of tuning that I go for. There will be days when they're a bit flat or sharp of that mark. Okay, Sahil Sorin, can you please elaborate more on your overall concept of sound and how one can get going? Everything from feeling it, hands, shells, drum heads, tunings, microphone, preamps, the room itself. Well, that's a pretty big topic, and it's what kind of sound are you trying to get is what it really comes down to. What kind of sound are you really trying to make? Because, if I had a concert tom kit with pinstripes on and an 8-inch depth snare drum, I wouldn't get a sound that feels like me. I'm someone who has tried to develop my own sound, I guess more in the lines with drummers who have got recognizable sounds. I've tried to get a sound that I think is musical and versatile and fits lots of genres, shall we say, or musical styles, and rather than a kind of session drummer mentality where I'm a chameleon who, you know, has a lot of different drum sets with lots of different sort of drum heads and tuning and damping and try to just adapt to the situation. I'd rather go with what I think is my own voice and try to make that fit musically than just try to give the producer or the artist some sort of vintage menu of, I can play like this with this drum sound, which I'm not criticising that. There's plenty of guys who do that very well. It was just not a path that I wanted to follow. I'm going to go through the microphones later on and tell you about which microphones I've got, the tuning, these new drums, as you may see from the other video that I did on SONA YouTube channel. These new drums are Birch. They're the medium shell, and the bass drum is the heavy shell. Why have I chosen a heavy bass drum? I don't know. I heard many, many years ago when I was a Pearl endorser, I went to the factory and Steve Ferrone's kit was there. And the guy said to me, "Oh, Steve always orders the heavy bass drum." Well, all right, I'll try that. It worked out for me. Nathan Curry, could you speak a bit about posture and the way you've developed speed and accuracy around the drum set? Well, posture, I mean, probably I slouch too much. I like to sit low. I was kind of, when I first started drumming, I sat up pretty high, and I'm talking about when I was a young teenager. And then when I got into Steve Gadd and Jeff Porcaro, and I saw pictures of them and Vinnie Colaiuta, when I saw pictures, they all sat really low. And I thought, yeah, that's the way to go. That looks hip to me. And I like the feeling of sitting behind the kit. And something else to point out is that I sit a long way back. I don't want to sit in a position where when I'm hitting the snare drum, my elbow is kind of back here. You know what I mean? If the snare drum's right between my legs, when I come to hit it, I need the distance to be able to strike it. You can't kind of punch someone when they're standing right in front of you. There's no room to get any leverage when you want to hit the snare drum nice and hard. If the snare drum's right between my legs, I can't hit it. It's just, I've got to have my elbow back past my body to even, rim shot the drum. Obviously, I've seen myself play on video, and that's very educational, actually, videoing yourself drumming. You can see all the things, wasted movements and stupid things you're doing with your arms. And probably when I watch myself now, I do probably slouch too much. So I don't know, it's been such a long time that I've sat that low, and the feeling of sitting back from the drums and feeling like I'm behind the drums, that just feels comfortable to me. Develop speed and accuracy around the drum set. I don't know of any exercises. I try to hit the drums right in the center. Apart from the snare drum, when I'm rim shotting the snare drum, can you see that? Yeah, you can see this little worn patch there. That's basically where the tip of the stick is hitting. Now that is just north of, it's like reading the weather, isn't it? That's just north of the center of the drum. I've found that if you rim shot the drum on backbeats, that's a sound I really, really like. But if the tip of your stick is landing a little bit south of the center, you can get some really horrible, weird harmonics and kind of sounds that I don't really like, timbali-ish sort of sounds. I like a much more solid backbeat sound. So hitting the front of the stick just north of the centre whilst rim-shotting, keeping it in the same place, trying to be consistent in the sound as well as in the timing, that was the way to go for me. I've had the same kind of setup for many, many years, so my hands are not guessing. They kind of know where the centre of each drum is, and I try to hit it in the centre. Okay, Tom Weil, have you ever worked with Bruford, or were you taught by Bruford at any point? No and no are the answers to that. I know Bill, he's a friend of mine. No, he didn't teach me anything, and I didn't work with him. Okay, Isabel, what can we expect for the new Pineapple Thief and tour? Well, great things are happening actually, and we're just finishing off a new record which we hope to release, well, I think sometime soon, unless there's problems with, the factories being closed because of the virus. I'm very happy with it. I think it's a really nice record. It's, I think, a progression from the last two records that I worked on with them. It's not just all the same thing over and over again. Bruce has got such a nice writing style, and he's got such a nice voice. We've worked on this record for more than a year, actually. We started in January 2019, and slowly we've built up a list of, really nice songs, and we're just putting the final touches on it. Damien Offline, I'm presuming that's not your real surname, or maybe Damien Online. Based on your experience, Gavin, how did you really build your vocabulary on the drums? Well, yeah, just I guess lots and lots of years. There's things that I play which I know I might have played a few times before. I think I look for small, very, very small kind of fractions, maybe 2 or 3 notes that I like the sound of, where I do maybe a flam between the tom and the snare and then hit the bell of the ride. Just little motions. Now I could fit that in anywhere, into a groove, into a fill, in any moment and in any sort of tempo or subdivision. So there are little kind of flourishes, you might say, that I favour and that I discover when I'm improvising. I'll play something, it might be a run up the toms and it hits the china on the way, and I think, oh yeah, I like that. It's a nice word, let's say. It's a nice articulation. And I might remember that. I might play it backwards, I might play it forwards, I might start it on the beat, I might start it a 16th note late, an 8th late, or put it into triplets, or it might end up in the middle of a fill. It's just like a little flick, so these short little fractions, I can put them together in any order, or what I can remember at any given moment, and they can become something that might lead on to a new sounding fill, but actually there's fractions in there that I've played many times before. I guess it's something that happens over years, and no one's more bored with my drumming than me, so I'm always looking for new angles and new ways to develop. Okay. Sayumi Awatake. I'm sorry if that's not the right pronunciation. I'm sorry for your loss of bandmate Bill Rieflin. Do you have joyful memories of the first session of 3 drummers? For those of you who don't know, Bill Rieflin was one of the 3 original drummers of this new King Crimson project, which began in 2014. Myself, Bill Rieflin, and Pat Mastalotto. And so Robert Fripp, the leader of King Crimson, had this idea to have 3 drummers playing at the same time. And so the very first time, I believe, was February 2014. Pat and Bill actually came here to my studio and I set up 3 of my drum sets. It was a SONA drum fest. And we started to discuss what we could play and how we could fit together. It was a very creative time. It was new. It was a new world, really. No one that I knew had ever done 3 drummers before. So what are the advantages and what are the problems? Let's work those out first and see what we can really make of it. And I think it was a very successful thing. Bill was a very creative guy, and he'll be very much missed by me and the entire King Crimson camp. Amanda Garrido. Have you ever practiced for a long period only with an electronic kit? What can be your advice for keeping the musicality? Well, Amanda, I haven't actually practiced very much on an electronic kit. I'm very much an acoustic drummer. I don't enjoy playing electronic drums very much. I've done it a few times. I lose a lot of my personality because my personality is the sound I'm making, and the sound is coming from the way that I'm striking the drum and my preferences of tuning and the drums and the shell and the mic and all the other things. So I haven't spent any real time practicing electronic kit. What can be your advice for keeping the musicality? Let's see. Well, trying to, playing along to music that inspires you, whatever that is, can help you kind of keep your creativity alive, for sure. Tomislav, oh my God, I don't think I could even pronounce that second name. I believe he's from Croatia. Yes, he's from Croatia. Hello, Gavin. Any advice for daily progress on the drums, posture, hand technique, licks, grooves? What would you recommend for an average drummer who wants to make it? Well, determination and persistence, really. Just keep practicing as much as you can. Try to stay motivated. There's a lot of inspiration that you can find on the internet, as well as a lot of things that might make you feel depressed. Watching sort of 6-year-old drummers play better than than what you can play would be depressing. Or getting sucked into the kind of sport of drumming. There's a lot of drumming on the internet which is what I would call sport drumming, which is purely based on speed and very heavy technical things. I'm not personally interested in that. As I've said before, it impresses me, but it doesn't move me. Okay, any advice on networking, being positive and being updated with the music business? I've never been very good at networking. As you can see, I don't have a Twitter account. I haven't really got an Instagram account. An Italian friend of mine runs an Instagram account, and maybe one day I will try to really get involved in that. The only thing I really do is Facebook, and even that, I'm not really much of a poster. I don't tend to post on I've got a personal Facebook. I almost never post anything on it. I don't know. I think I'm quite introvert and private. I don't feel like sharing with the world what I've eaten for lunch or trying to find job opportunities, that kind of thing. Okay. Diago Salavaria. Gavin, can you offer some advice on practicing buzz rolls? Well, I guess a buzz roll really depends on the grip you've got, because instead of a single stroke, you're doing a buzz. I guess I put pressure on this finger, a squeeze. One of the few times where I would actually let go of the other 3 fingers. For me, a buzz roll, you're just going to come from this type of grip. obviously with both hands. And on a snare drum, you're best off starting near the edge where the tympanic pressure is higher, so it's tighter at the edge. It's easier to start a buzz roll at the edge and move towards the middle once you get going. Matthew Stevenson, what did you do before you were able to financially support yourself through drumming professionally, and how did you make that transition? Well, I didn't actually. I've never really done a proper job. I've never done a real day's work in my life. I left school at 16 and I started to work. I was still living with my parents until I was, 22. And then I saved up enough money to put a deposit down on an apartment, a very small apartment, and I just had my practice kit in there. And I lived very cheaply. Many days I ate rice and boiled fish in a bag and tried not to spend too much money. I got frustrated by the fact that I couldn't play the drums, so I found a local rehearsal room that was empty in the daytime, and I made an agreement with the guy who owned the place that he would let me in at 9:30 in the morning, lock me in the building. This was in the basement of a building, and then he would come back at 5:30, and for that I paid him £65, British pounds, a week. So I would go there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and practice from, say, about 9:30 to about 5, and I would stop for an hour. There was a secret fire escape door. I could get out. I wasn't sort of seriously locked in. And there was a little cafe upstairs, so I would go and have a coffee, I would go and have lunch, and I would come back down. But the fantastic thing was, this was before the days of mobile phones, before the days of internet. No one called, no one turned up. I had absolutely complete solitude that I could just... I had nothing. There was nothing else in the building, or at least in the basement of the building, that I could do. So I went there solidly for about a year and a half, and then on and off for another sort of 5 or 6 years. For about a year and a half, I didn't have much work at all, and I really wanted to practice the drums. I thought the way forward for me is to just get into some serious practice. You know, you've heard of these kind of Dave Weckl type guys who've done 8 hours a day. And I thought, well, I've never done 8 hours a day. Let's try it. And it was great, actually. It was very hard at first, and then I got addicted to it. And I couldn't wait to get back down there the next day. I had more and more ideas, and I had lots of manuscript and ideas and drum books and play along things, and I used to record myself, and later I even videoed myself so I could see some of the motions that I was using. So yeah, I just scraped through for a good, I don't know, 15 years of my career. The first 15 years I just scraped through, not eating much, and the only money I spent was the petrol to drive to this rehearsal room, and the cost, £65 a week on top of my mortgage, was just about what I could handle. Okay, Evgeny Trefilov. Sorry, I didn't get your name right. I have some questions are there plans for transcription books about the Pineapple Thief songs, or maybe even King Crimson? That's a great idea, actually. As you know, my transcription buddy Terry Branham has written 2 books. One which was the transcriptions of the records I made with a guy called 05 Rick, or at least the first 2 albums. And then he did a transcribing book of Porcupine Tree songs. Both those books are available from Hudson Music. The Porcupine Tree one has a 2-hour DVD of me explaining the songs. No, it doesn't. No, it's the other one. It's the 05 Rick Transcriptions. Yeah, I think so. It's been so long since I've thought about those books. But yes, an excellent idea. I'll think about that. I've read in some interviews that you've send finished stereo mixes of drums to Bruce, the singer of Pineapple Thief. Yeah, that's right. I like to mix my own drums. I think I'm the only person who can get exactly the detail and the balance that I was intending when I played them. I've obviously in the past done recording sessions where someone else has mixed my drums, and I've pretty much 99% been disappointed when I've heard it because they mixed it in a way that I didn't play. They put some levels of the drums to volumes that it wasn't the way that I played them, and there were details missing that I would have brought out. So when I first started working with the Pineapple Thief, I said to Bruce, can I just send you a stereo mix? And he said, yeah. So what happens is I send a stereo mix, Bruce mixes to that, then he sends me a finished mix with my drum mix inside of his mix, and then I say, okay, now I can hear what the other instruments are doing more clearly. Send me a drumless version, and then I will remix my drums to the drumless version. Now that can go on maybe more than 10 times. I will produce an updated drum mix as I start to hear more and more things that are progressing in the Pineapple Thief mix. And we end up with a happy situation. Okay, does it work for surround mix as well? No, I don't. When I mix surround or when Bruce mixes surround, the drums always stay in the front pair. I don't like to split the drums up around the room. It sounds very unnatural. Okay, Jan Court. What do you have in your in-ears during a gig? Mostly Stevie Wonder. I like listening to Stevie Wonder. Since when do you play SONA drums? Well, I started 2000 or 2001. A good friend of mine, Ian Croft, who was also the guy responsible for me endorsing Zildjian cymbals, he later ended up at SONA, working for SONA from the UK, and he got me to play. It didn't take much persuading because they were so fantastic. I was more than delighted. I was very happy to do that. Someone called Someone Somewhere. Dear Gavin, thank you for the music. What is your opinion on extreme metal drumming? Have you ever practiced double bass drum techniques? Not very much is the answer. I mean, the bass drum techniques. I don't know a lot of extreme metal drumming. I was very, very influenced and impressed by the band Meshuggah, the Swedish band, and Thomas Hark, the drummer there. Wow, great ideas and great rhythmic designs. It's not something I grew up with, so I can't really do a very convincing extreme metal. It would be an impersonation. It wouldn't be very authentic if I tried to play it. So no, I don't generally play or practice a lot of double bass drum things. Siddhant Baru. Hello, I noticed most of your work with double bass is quick fills rather than double bass grooves. Any tips for playing bursts like In Way Out of Here? Yeah, actually you'll find a lesson I did, you'll find it on Drumeo, one of the Drumeo videos talking about the Hurter. A Hurter is two 30-second notes followed by two 16ths. And I like to play that on the bass drum. I like to play 4 16ths grouped in, what would it be a group of? It would be a group of dotted eighth notes. So I've got a handful of things I can do, a feet full of things I can do on the double bass drum, and I kind of make that work. Very useful in fills, in fact. Okay. Brenton Weinger, will you go over your microphone and record setup? Which microphones are you using on your toms and snares? Okay, let's see if I can get a bit closer. Inside the bass drum, I've got two microphones, and they're both suspended on something called a Kelly shoe, which means that they are sort of elasticated, shock-proof inside the bass drum. One of them is the AKG D12 VR. It's their new version of the old classic D12. And under that, also floating in the middle of the bass drum, is the Shure Beta 91A, which is a flat mic. Now, the pair of them are about this far from the Beta, and they both give a similar sound, but actually when you blend them together, that's when it really gets fun. And so I think maybe I reversed the phase on one of them. Now, snare drum, I've got the classic SM57 Shure microphone on the top. I've tried lots of different snare drum mics in my time, and that's really the best one. Underneath, I have an Audix i5. The underside of the snare drum, I don't know what, I've used various mics. It's such a strange sound pointing straight at the wires of a snare drum. You could probably use almost any mic and it's going to sound the same. On the hi-hat, I have a Bayer. Oh, what is that? It's not a 201. I'll have a look in a second. On the toms, these are all AKG 414. I think they are called XLS. I've tried many, many different tom mics. And when I was working with Simon Phillips 9 years ago, I was at his studio and he was talking about large condenser mics on the drums, capturing the transients, and I had a similar conversation with Dave Weckl, and I thought, yeah, you know what, I'm going to try some of this. So I got myself some of those, and I put them side by side with the mics I was using previously, which was Sennheiser 421, and I thought this was an improvement, so I switched to using these AKG 414 XLS. The overheads up there are AKG C12s. Horribly expensive microphones, but they really sound amazing. There is a CK391 AKG on the ride. Now, out here, which you can't quite see at the moment, let me see if I can swing you around a little bit. There is a very large room with about a 50-foot ceiling. We have a very strange house. It's like a church hall in the centre of the house, and that is the most amazing drum reverb. So I play in here with these big doors open, and outside in the large hall I've got a pair of AKG 414 XL2s set to Omni mode. On those microphones there's a switch and you can change the pattern, and Omni, you're going to pick up the whole room, and that really is an amazing sound. Maybe later on I'll play the drums, or on another video I'll play these new drums, and you'll be able to hear that live room. That really does make a big difference. So that's all the mics I use. Okay, Jean-Pierre. The new kit is beautiful. Is that the one you'll use on the tour? Well, that's the one I was hoping I'm going to use on the next Pineapple Thief tour. Also, I noticed that you put your kit on a platform that is on a rolling riser, and that is because I wanted to see if the drum sound would change a lot if I moved the drums around the room and more towards the big hall, which, yes, does change the sound of the drums quite a lot. I've tended to actually just keep them there after buying that flipping rolling riser. Chris Gracchus, how to set up your double bass drum pedal, and someone called Marcus. What tension do you use on the bass drum pedal? Well, that's a hard one to say. I would say pretty loose, actually. Quite, I mean, if it was a scale of 0 was completely loose and 100 was maximum tight, I would say I'm on about 25. It's way down in the loose area. There's so many things, a bass drum pedal, how far your foot, I play my foot halfway down the pedal to give me much more leverage, so I can play much more dynamically. When I'm playing soft, I still have my foot halfway down the pedal, heel off the ground. That's just the way I've been doing it for the last, God, I don't know, 30, 40 years or something. And, you know, the angle of the beater, how far the beater is standing out from the pedal, the throw, there's so many variables on a pedal. The spring, yeah, that comes into it as well. It's a very complex kind of question, actually. Okay, Twan Bakker, what's your drum workout fitness tips? I don't really have any. I like to ride a bicycle when the weather's nice. I know that, you know, if I had to get back and start doing a really heavy hitting gig again, if I was playing with Porcupine Tree, you know, that was a 2-hour or more than 2-hour show and a lot of hard physical songs. It was more of a stamina thing than the actual muscles I was using. So I would ride the bike for a few months before the tour started. The Vulcan guy. Would you say that studying composition is important for drumming at this stage? Yeah, absolutely. I write bits of songs. I write, you know, a few chord structures, some melodies. I play the Wurlitzer there. I also play the bass badly and the guitar badly, but it gives me enough to be able to show a real songwriter my intention of where I think the song should go. Or sometimes, you know, Bruce will send me a song and I think, this is great, I like this, but I think we need a breakdown, a middle 8 section, a weird section, and quite often I'll come up with that on the piano and send it to him. So yeah, composition's a brilliant thing, and it really helps your drumming. Ishan Dave, hey Gavin, can you explain your hi-hat foot technique? How far apart do you keep the hi-hats? As you might be able to see at the background there, I've got them quite a long way apart. Easily 2 fingers width. And, you know, I use the left foot a lot in my drumming for all kinds of grooves and fills, and I'm amazed when I see drummers who have their hi-hats like this far apart. You're losing such an incredible instrument. If you're only going to hit it with a stick, you know, the things you can do with your left foot are fantastic. It's the secret weapon, really. And it's very hip. You can do some very hip things with your left foot, but you need to keep the cymbals kind of reasonably far apart to be able to take advantage of some of the effects, the splashing effects you can do, and getting a loud chick sound, and also keeping the top cymbal reasonably loose. I don't even see that. I used to have it really, really tight, but again, there's some tricks and things you can do when the top cymbal's really tight. You lose some of the control. As I said, I've seen many drummers play with their hi-hat cymbals barely apart, and bizarrely they stomp on the pedal with their foot actually leaving the pedal. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, I think I've always played with the hi-hat cymbals quite a long way apart. I like that. Okay. Alana Frame. Hey Gavin, what made you go with Birch for the new kit? Well, I've had a lot of maple kits. This is the first Birch kit I've had since I bought my Yamaha 9000 recording series in 1982 or 3. And I loved that kit. I've still got it. And I had it set up the other day in the studio just for fun. I just set it up to, trip down memory lane. And it's lovely. Something I really did notice was, because they're the old style fittings that the tom mounts are directly connected to the wood, and then you've got this pipe that goes right inside the drum. They're much more difficult to tune. You can really hear some of the drums choking because of that lack of isolation. Nowadays, or at least for about the last 20 years, drum manufacturers have made drums that have got some sort of suspension mount in them. Famously, the rims system that came on, I don't know, in the 90s, maybe late 80s, 90s, that really proved a point that you could get a much nicer drum sound, and the toms would sing in a way that when you've got the mounts on the side, or at least the old style mounts on the side, and the bar going through, that really kills the sound. So anyway, I thought Birch kit, yeah, why not? Let's give it a go. And I'm really happy with it. I'll play this for you later on and you can hear it. Prabin Pachai. Hello, Gavin. I'm from Nepal. Which company makes that frame? Well, this is a Gibraltar rack. I've been playing Gibraltar for, I think, about 9 years now, and I love them. I did have another rack before that, but this is much more pleasing aesthetically, and you can really design anything you want. If you go to the Gibraltar rack website, you'll see the incredible amount of things you can do. And I liked the fact that these are kind of stealth, they're low level. I don't have a bar that goes across the front of the bass drum, so there's actually two racks, a left rack and a right rack, and it makes setting up very easily. Some of them I mount microphones off, and so for my drum techs, it's very easy. I say drum techs, I've only actually got one at a time, but in two different bands. It's very repeatable. So when I walk on for a sound check, or at a festival when there's no time to do a sound check, I can see that everything's absolutely in the perfect place. Tom Rice. Hi Gavin, are there any special mixing tricks you like to use when mixing your kit, or is it fairly standard EQ, compression treatment, and more of a focus on tuning, microphone placement, the room? I don't think I do any unusual tricks, just things I've learned over the decades, which is standard EQ and compression. I use a very interesting plugin called Auto Align by a company called Sound Radix. And what that does, because I'm using so many mics, they're all hearing everything at the same time. If you solo the bass drum mic, you can hear the snare drum, you can hear a bit of the hi-hat, you can hear the tom-toms, you can hear the cymbals. And if I soloed, one of the floor tom mics, you can hear all the other drums being played. They're not just exclusive to that drum. And that presents a problem of phase, especially with the snare drum, because the snare drum being the loudest drum, it's heard by all the mics quite a lot. So what the Sound Radix Auto Align does, it measures in samples the distance between, or the difference in distances. So the snare drum mic is about, 2 or 3 inches from the snare drum, but the overheads are, 5, 6 feet away? So when I hit the snare drum mic gets the snare drum first, but because the speed of sound isn't that fast, by the time it hits the overheads, there's a few milliseconds of delay, and by the time it hits the microphones out in my big hall here, there's a lot of delay. And that can cause a weird kind of flam and a weird phasing. So this particular plugin can correct all that. And it's just like everything suddenly comes into focus, into sharp focus. And when you turn it off, you think, oh God, yeah, there's a lot of difference, isn't it? Is that what I've been used to all these years? That's quite an interesting plugin that I've been using for the last 6 or 7 years or so. Okay, Per H. Arneson, how far do you think you can come without hard work and practice versus having talent? I'm not a fantastic believer in talent. I think some kids or some beginners have a natural aptitude for certain things. Okay, I was very coordinated as a kid. I was in dance school when I was 6 years old. You know, I could play football, soccer very well. I just had control of my arms and legs. Now, my dad was a professional trumpet player, and he wanted me and my brothers to try to play the trumpet. And I loved it, but it wasn't me. And then a friend of my dad, very nice guy called Freddie Adamson, a drummer friend of my dad, he came to the house and I think he gave me a pair of drumsticks, and I just thought, oh, this connects with me. This feels like I can express myself quite well. I don't think I was gifted in any way at all. I think, you know, if you heard me drumming when I was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, it's just pretty bad. But I had determination. I wanted to be good. Sometimes the most important thing is your determination about how good you want to be. How much of your life are you willing to devote to being the best drummer you can be? Are you willing to do 8 hours practice a day? How important is it to you to be as good as you can possibly be? And I had that mentality much more than some, you know, God-given talent, as you might say, or, you know, some gift. I don't think I was gifted whatsoever. It has, in my case at least, come from, you know, practice and hard work. Nia strumenti musicali, sounds Italian. Do you change sticks to what genre you're playing, or do you stick, no pun intended, with the same sticks whatever you play? Pretty much 90% of what I play, I use my Vic Firth stick, which I helped design. And it's a big stick. It's not a heavy stick, or at least I try not to get the really heavy ones. But, you know, I've got pretty big hands. And when I pick up a stick, here's what people would call an average size stick. This is like a 5A. This feels like a knitting needle to me. My hands are just, it feels too thin. And for the level that I like to play at, I do like to hit the drums reasonably hard. This is going to hurt and probably snap quite quickly. And I found that bigger sticks just kind of felt right to me. It just feels balanced and it feels right. So I can play as quiet as you want with a big stick. It doesn't mean that I've got a big stick, I'm going to start playing really, really loud. Having said all that, I don't really play super quiet music. Okay. John Rintgens. Sorry, John, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Are you ever going to release a mixing tutorial? Well, I have been thinking about that because, you know, I get comments on videos, hey, your drum sounds nice, and I pay a lot of attention to the quality of the videos and the sound that are released. When someone comes and stands in front of you with their iPhone and films it, it's going to sound pretty bad. It's probably going to look pretty bad as well. Now, people make comments on videos without realizing what microphone they are hearing the drums from. Sometimes someone will come to a sound check and say, from one of the companies that I endorse, can I film you at a sound check? And I say, yeah, how are we going to capture the sound? He said, well, off my little camera. I said, well, it's not going to sound that good. It's not going to do me any favours. It's not going to do you any favours. So let me record the drums properly and, mix it afterwards, and the quality of the sound will be much, much better. Now, how I come about the quality of the sound, I could, in the future, make a mixing tutorial and show you what I use. I use Logic Audio on a Mac, and most of them are standard plugins, just a few third-party plugins, and I could walk through how I mix the drums. So, yeah, it's a good idea. Lorenz K, how much do you practice normally? Well, I tend to practice on when I'm not on tour, of course, when I'm at home, probably maybe 4 or 5 short bursts of about 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes even 10 to 15 minutes. I don't do so well these days sitting down and trying to play for an hour and a half or 2 hours. Apart from which, I get distracted. That was the beauty of practicing back in that rehearsal room decades ago where they locked me in the building, was there wasn't any distractions. Now there's lots of distractions. I've got things to do, emails, I've got phone calls, there's people knocking on the door, there's so many things to do other than practice the drums, so you've got to be very disciplined. I do better working for about 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes maximum, and then stopping for an hour or more. Maybe I'll have lunch or we go out or something. And then I come back and practice a bit. So short bursts work better for me. It might add up to a couple of hours in a day. Pier Francesco Vairo. Hi Gavin, what is for you the qualities to be a professional drummer? Well, really, it's a different discipline. Being a professional drummer is a completely different thing to what most people think of as drumming. Being a professional drummer means that you're probably going to spend a majority of your time playing music that you don't actually like to a very high, or to the highest degree you can. Being able to sight read is a good thing, and working for money. That's really the definition of being professional. So in the beginning, especially, you just have to accept every job that's offered to you, whatever it is. I can remember lots of times back in the 80s where people would call me up and say, hey, Gavin, are you busy on Saturday night? I'd say, no. They say, okay, the gig's in Norwich Town Hall, wear black trousers, black jacket, white shirt, black bow tie. It starts at 8 o'clock, set up before 7. That was it. And maybe they'd tell me how much money it was, probably about £30. And I would go there. I didn't know any of the other musicians. This is what in those days we used to call a scratch band. Sometimes none of the musicians had played together. And we just read charts, and the band leader would count the songs in, and we'd play the charts. I didn't know what style of music it was going to be. I didn't know, you had got to be really versatile and flexible. And you just played all night like that. That was it music I liked? No, probably not. Probably not. I mean, since I started working in bands, since I joined Porcupine Tree, I gave up really being a hired gun so much, because I realized that there was so much music that wasn't my cup of tea that I wasn't really enjoying it. But that's part of being professional. You're going to play whatever's offered to you and hopefully make a living at it. Joseph Martin, in a creative way, how can you come up with fills and progressions? Spontaneously, or try several and then choose one of them? Well, in a recording situation, I would try to play spontaneously, and then when I listen back, if I didn't like the fills, I might try to, try some other fills. But choosing fills is a funny thing. A fill has got a purpose. It's got a musical purpose, and trying to find the right kind of fill for the right situation in the right kind of music is as difficult as playing it in the first place. You can have a whole bunch of fills that you've pre-rehearsed and you've worked out and just spin them out, just play the same 10 fills all your life. Or you can try and be creative and think of new fills that, have got some shape and meaning and some musicality about them that are specific to that moment. It's why I don't really like seeing videos of people analysing my fills, is because the most important thing is the context. If you take them out of context and say, oh, look, here's Gavin's fill from this song, well, you've missed the most important thing. Why did I play that fill in that song at that moment? Sometimes the best fill is nothing at all. Just don't play for a bar, or just hit one tom. That might be the best fill. But if you analyse that later, it would be a pretty disappointing fill. So people tend to choose the more technical ones. Draw Shapir. I'm sorry if that's not the way to pronounce your name. Do you chart out new songs that musicians send to record? I try not to. Actually, what I tend to do is on Logic, I put in coloured blocks on an instrument track, an empty MIDI object, and then I colour them. So let's say the intro is going to be yellow, and that's 8 bars, and then the first verse is 16, or maybe I'll make that green, and then there's a bridge that's 4 bars, I'll make that blue, and then the chorus is red. And so I'm sitting over here, I can see my iMac here, and I can see, oh, there's an intro, verse, bridge, chorus, there's a stop. So if it's a basic kind of arrangement, I'll just put colours through the song so I can kind of see the arrangement. Of course, if the song starts getting complicated, or there's odd times or accents, then I'm going to write those little parts out. But unless it's something very specific, I don't really want to write a chart out from the beginning to the end, unless it's a really complicated piece with lots of detail. Damien Folin. Gavin, have you any advice or trick to start a song with the perfect tempo without a click? Well, yeah, of course, I was in that position a lot in the old days. And what I would do is, whilst the singer might be announcing the next song, I would tap on my leg and sing the next song, the song that I'm about to count in. I would sing a bit of the verse, I'd sing a bit of the chorus, I'd tap on my leg, and oh no, maybe that's too fast. And then I'd find what I think is the right tempo, and then count the band off. 2, 3, 4. Sometimes I was too fast, sometimes I was too slow. As I used to say to the singer, how would you like the tempo? Too fast or too slow? The band need to trust the drummer as well. Some nights you're all a bit more excited, and other nights maybe you're a bit more relaxed, and tempos kind of feel right on the night, which if you analyse them the next morning, you think, oh no, that was too slow or too fast. But just try and sing the song to yourself and have an idea of approximately or quite close what the tempo could be. Pellyrods. Hi Gavin, could you explain your approach to writing drum parts for songs, especially for complicated parts in the music? Well, I try to not just play the most obvious thing. I try not to just do the thing that you've heard a million times before. I'm always trying to find ways that I could invent a drum part that has got something unique about it. And I might get inspiration from the bass line or the guitar line or the vocal melody. And if you're playing in odd times, where you're going to put a backbeat on the snare drum. If you're in 7 or you're in 11, where are you going to place the backbeats? You know, there is no 2 and 4. Or there is a 2 and 4 if you want to cut the end of the bar off, or extend the end of the bar. I don't know. I've got a sort of sense, I guess I've developed over years, which I think that works, that doesn't work. So I play something, I listen to it, and I think, no, that doesn't work. Try something else, and I think, oh, part of that works. Which part of that works is it that I like? Oh, maybe the first half of the bar, that works. I just need to come up with something for the second half of the bar. So I just keep experimenting until I've found patterns and grooves that I think are working for the song. Complicated parts, I try to make them sound less complicated. And sometimes when they're in 4/4, I try to make them sound like they're not in 4/4. Okay, Chiara Cotugno. How do you approach a song which doesn't need too much drums in it? Yeah, well, that's one of the more interesting challenges. How can you play really simple but still make it interesting? That is an interesting challenge, one that I'm probably more interested in now than how to make complicated drum parts. I don't know. I mean, if it's a vocal song, I listen to the vocals. Try not to do anything distracting when the vocalist is singing. And when the vocalist isn't singing, you've got a chance to do something, just a tiny little flourish, a musical flourish in between the vocal lines, you know, like a sax player would or a piano player would. Try not to think like a drummer and just play the instrument as if you're playing a different instrument, as if you're playing a piano or you're playing a guitar or something. Just try and think not like a drummer. Lisa LaFlame. In The Pineapple Thief, do you and Bruce alter his lyrics to accentuate certain rhythms that you want to hear? Not really. Not really. I think the hardest part of songwriting is writing lyrics and writing good lyrics. And it's a job that I've never wanted to do and never have done. So I admire and respect anyone who writes good lyrics, and I'll adjust the drums to the vocals. Don't worry, I won't ask you to change the vocals. Mirko Algello, my friend from Sicily. Do you have 2 drum sets of this new one? Are the shells in medium birch or just the bass drum is heavy? Yeah, just the bass drum is heavy. The shells are all medium birch. I don't have 2 drum sets like this. The blue drum set, which I've been playing, I do have 2 drum sets. One is in the United States and the other one is here at the moment. There are many times where the blue drum set is out in Europe with the King Crimson equipment, and then we fly to America and I use my identical blue tribal SONA kit, currently stored on the West Coast. Carle Borg, do you play any other instrument? Well, yeah, as I said before, pretty badly, keyboards, bass and drums. TK, how do you damp your bass drum? Well, actually, lately, I've been using this pillow. It's called Kick Pro. There we are. And I love it. It's great. It's heavy. It's full of sand. And that's a great thing. And it has a surface, a sort of almost kind of leatherette. It's kind of quite sticky surface, if you know what I mean. It's like the sort of thing you put on the bottom of slippers. It's quite, so what that means is it doesn't, when you put it inside the bass drum shell, after a few heavy hits, it doesn't start moving away from you. And because it's sand, it actually leans up against the batter head and has got a really nice, gives you a very nice sound. So that's all the questions I could easily answer from the session that went wrong yesterday on YouTube. I hope you're all at home staying safe. And I'm going to, on another video, I'm going to play these brand new drums and you can hear what they sound like. Thanks for watching.